When women hold off from marrying men, we call it independence. When men hold off from marrying women, we call it fear of commitment. If women had to promise to provide for a man for a lifetime before he removed his veil and showed her his smile, would we think of this as a system of female privilege? The teenage female has less demand to perform and more resources to attract love. Her body and mind are more genetic gifts. Feminists often discuss women having 2 jobs, work and children. True. But no one discusses those divorced and remarried men who have 3 jobs, work, and 2 sets of children to nurture and financially support. In 1 decade, women had gotten more protection against offensive jokes in the workplace than men had gotten in centuries against being killed in the workplace. Men are not only women's unpaid bodyguards, they actually pay to be a woman's bodyguard. When men in relationships have more money, we say they have the power. When women in relationships have more money, we say they are being used. Feminism justified female victim power by convincing the world that we lived in a sexist, male-dominated, and patriarchal world. In our society, the sound of men complaining is like nails on a chalkboard. If women really earned 59 cents to the dollar for the same work as men, what business could compete effectively by hiring men at any level? Just as women needed the help of the law to enter the workplace in the 20th century, men will need the help of the law to love their children in the 21st century. Nobody has said to men, it is okay if you want to be a full-time dad, find a woman who will support you. Men's greatest weakness is their facade of strength, and women's greatest strength is their facade of weakness. If a man belittles a woman, it could become a lawsuit. If women belittle men, it's a Hallmark card. We take men's obligation to earn money, and when they do it well, we blame them for having power and being oppressors. And when they don't do it all, women just don't marry men who are reading, "I'm okay, you're okay," in the unemployment line. Men are often a lot less vindictive than women are, because we are rejected constantly every day. I've gone from being quite wealthy, when I was defending women, to being quite poor defending men. So long as you create laws that define women as victims, as creatures that demand protection, that need bodyguards, you are going to perpetuate the very worst of our sexist past. When women criticized men, I called it insight. When men criticized women, I called it sexism and backlash. The only men who aren't in fear of women's reactions are usually men who aren't born or who are dead. One can make a case that says that since 85% of children being brought up in single-family homes are being brought up by women, that about 85% of elementary school teachers should be males to balance out the feminization that the boys and girls receive. A man cannot tell whether a woman is in love with him or his security blanket until she is financially and psychologically independent enough to leave. Until a woman has learned how to leave, even she cannot be sure she has learned to love. Women do not enter a profession in significant numbers until it is physically safe. So until we care enough about men's safety to turn the death professions into safe professions, we in effect discriminate against women. And if your son is unemployed, 3 out of 4 women say they would not date an unemployed man. In contrast, for 2/3 of men, dating an unemployed woman is a non-issue. But here's the first clue: the male-female pay gap is not a gap between men and women, it is a gap between moms and dads. Or more precisely, between men and women's work-life decisions when they become moms and dads. In one generation, young men have gone from 61% of college degree recipients to a projected 39%, young women from 39% to a projected 61%. Your son is more likely to seek a job in a sector that is being increasingly outsourced overseas, as with computer technology and manufacturing, as well as online jobs. Your daughter is more likely to hold jobs in stable sectors that are more recession-proof, like health and education, both of which are 75% women. A man convicted of murder is 20 times more likely than a woman convicted of murder to receive the death penalty. Since the 1976 reinstatement of the death penalty, 120 men and only 1 woman have actually been executed. The woman, from North Carolina, said she preferred to be executed. In North Carolina, a man who commits second-degree murder receives a sentence on average of 12.6 years longer than a woman who commits second-degree murder. 11 women from the Miss Black America pageant all claimed Mike Tyson touched them on their rears. So the founder of the pageant filed a $607 million lawsuit against Mike Tyson. Several of the contestants eventually admitted they had lied, in the hope of getting publicity and cashing in on the award money. Think about it. If each woman had the potential for being awarded $20 million to $30 million, aren't we really bribing women to make false accusations? And the Miss Black America pageant itself got more publicity than it had received in its history. The lawsuit made tabloid headlines. The dropping of the lawsuit was buried in the back pages. My Body, My Choice, Power in the 1990s. If a woman and man make love and she says she is using birth control but is not, she has the right to raise the child without his knowing he even has a child, and then to sue him for retroactive child support even 10 to 20 years later, depending on the state. This forces him to take a job with more pay and more stress and therefore earlier death. Although it's his body, he has no choice. He has the option of being a slave, working for another without pay or choice, or being a criminal. Roe v. Wade gave women the vote over their bodies. Men still don't have the vote over theirs, whether in love or war. During wartime, experimental drugs were often tried on men. If a drug failed, the man died. But if a drug succeeded, it was used to save both women and men, but without women dying to develop it. Men were similarly used as guinea pigs in the development of emergency procedures, microwave ovens. A man was inadvertently cooked during the testing process, and other advances that served both sexes. Later it was labeled sexism that physicians studied men more than women. No one labeled it sexism because men were used as guinea pigs more than women. True or false? Employers are prohibited from practicing sex discrimination in hiring and promoting employees. Answer: false. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 1987 that in job areas dominated by men, less qualified women could be hired. It did not allow less qualified men to be hired in areas dominated by women, e.g., elementary school teacher, nurse, secretary, cocktail waiting, restaurant host, office receptionist, flight attendant. Women are the only oppressed group to share the same parents as the oppressor, to be born into the middle class and upper class as frequently as the oppressor, to own more of the culture's luxury items than the oppressor, the only oppressed group whose unpaid labor enables them to buy most of the $50 billion worth of cosmetics sold each year, the only oppressed group that spends more on high fashion, brand-name clothing than their oppressors, the only oppressed group that watches more TV during every time category than their oppressors. Feminists often compare marriage to slavery, with the female as slave. It seems like an insult to women's intelligence to suggest that marriage is female slavery when we know it is 25 million American females who read an average of 20 romance novels per month, often with the fantasy of marriage. Are feminists suggesting that 25 million American women have enslavement fantasies because they fantasize marriage? Is this the reason Danielle Steele is the best-selling author in the world?